Okay, I believe we're going live on YouTube. Just want to make sure that's correct. Yep, looks like we're live. So, well, welcome everybody to the January Cube.js community call. Hopefully you can see the browser windows that I'm sharing. If you can give me a thumbs up. Cool, awesome, thanks. First of all, Happy New Year, happy 2021, and hopefully people had a chance to relax. Obviously, it's not like the normal end of the year or Christmas holidays with the pandemic, but hopefully people had a good break nonetheless. So we'll get started. First of all, just a quick reminder on the community code of conduct, which is something that we remind people of each time we have these calls or other events that we're going to have in the future. Just a reminder that, we want to foster an open and welcoming environment for everybody. So you can read the full text there, and where you can report incidents that unfortunately you may see for whatever reason. So that's that. And then agenda topic. As usual, we will go over a couple of quick community news. We don't have a whole lot because of the holidays, but just want to talk about a couple of things. And we have a couple of people, I believe, from Jobber. We had a nice start to the holiday season. About 3 weeks ago, we released a user story. This is something we've been collaborating with the Jobber team on for a few months, so we're happy to get that out before the holidays. So we have a couple of team members here who will discuss their journey with Cube.js. And as we're in the beginning of the quarter, we have Pavel here. We'll talk about the Q1 roadmap items, and I'll also do a quick recap of the roadmap items that we had for Q4. So hopefully that works, and then I'll do my best to end the call around 45 minutes past the hour. But if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat or stop us anytime, and then we're happy to answer your questions, and want to definitely keep this call interactive. So on the community news front, just a couple of quick things. The first one is something we talked about in December. We put in place a DCO, which is a lot more developer friendly than a contributor license agreement. So it's just a reminder that we talked about this last month. But the other thing I did after the call was to also reach out to past contributors to Cube.js. There are about 35 to 40 individuals, I believe. I can't remember the exact number, but just wanted to make sure that they were okay with their past their contributions before this was put in place, go under DCO, and then there were no concerns or issues. The replies that I did get was just thumbs up and acknowledging that there are no issues, and that people were supportive. So I definitely appreciate everybody's support and your cooperation on this. So it's all good news. Just wanted to wanted to follow up on my action item I had from last month about following up with past contributors. The next item, this is something that we, a couple of team members and I started talking about. We already have a lot of people. Like, as you can see from people on this call and conversation on Slack, we already have a pretty sizable number of people that are contributing to Cube.js in a number of different ways. And we thought it'd be fun to organize, obviously we've been working asynchronously and that's been going well, but we thought it'd be fun to organize an event where people can kind of come together. It'll be in a virtual setting and find ways to sort of collaborate. So we're sort of still iterating on ideas, and we'd love to get people's feedback. I'll start a thread on the contributor Slack channel sometime later today or tomorrow. But I've done this in my previous job at GitLab as well. And then this is something that I was, like, to be honest, somewhat skeptical of when we started. Like, we thought this would be an interesting experiment to see what happens. But over time, over the 2-year period when we had the hackathon, it really grew, and there was a lot of momentum. And I think people enjoy sort of coming together, even if it's like over Zoom or virtually, to kind of work on something together. So we're going to work together on ideas to create an event. And I put the word hackathon in quotes because I think hackathon people tend to associate mostly with writing code. I mean, that's great, and we obviously love code, but we want to create an inclusive event where people can make different contributions, like helping with documentation, sharing examples, in addition to working on some of the issues that we have with labels like help wanted or good first issue. And we might also look at maybe like a tutorial type sessions that are led by either employees or community members. And we want to obviously create a fun event with some swags that we're looking into. And then if it all goes well, we'll think about doing this on a regular basis throughout the year. Like I said, at GitLab, we did it quarterly, but maybe we need a different cadence for our community. But we'll look into that, and we'll start a discussion on Slack. So appreciate your feedback and your suggestions on that based on what you've seen in other like communities. So without further ado, I believe we have both Jessica and JC on the Jobber user story. So in case you haven't seen it, there's a link on the slides that you can click on that I posted on the Notion page as well. But this is the user story that was published on December like a 17-ish. And I mean, this is something, I think this activity started even before I joined the company. I definitely appreciate the Jobber team on working with us. And we thought, I mean, a lot of the learnings in terms of your contribution to Cube.js, how you did a lot of testing, how you set up the architecture was very instructive. So if you haven't already, I encourage everyone to read through this. And we also have another one that's in the pipeline that we're working with another community members on. So you'll probably see another user story coming out hopefully soon. But if you're interested in also working with you to publish another user story, please feel free to ping me or others at CubeDev on Slack, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you. I think this is a great tool to not only share like a case study, but I mean, I think a lot of community members can learn from what other people have gone through. So I'll just pause there, and I mean, JC or Jessica, if you want to like a quickie introduce yourself, and I can kick it off with like a few other questions. But I encourage, there are a lot of people on the call. I encourage you to either vocalize or type your questions on chat. But JC or Jessica, I guess I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Ray. I'm JC Weinrich, architect at Jobber. Been with the company about 4 years now, and yeah, I can speak to kind of the story of how we came to use Cube.js and kind of the architecture we landed on, and kind of some of the interest along the way. And yeah, Jessica's here as well. She's a key engineer on the team. I was kind of more involved during the early phase, kind of technology selection and helping figure out how we were going to use it. And she did all the heavy lifting of actually connecting it up to her data and working with her team to actually land a feature in our product using it. So yeah, definitely any questions, feel free to ask as we go. It's our particular usage was more against like a production database for our software. So at Jobber, we make software product for small home service-based businesses to use for basically the day-to-day operations, to manage their customer list, schedule in their work, send out invoices and collect payments, things like that. And one of the features is a dashboard. So actually at the top of this article is to kind of give you like a mental picture of like what our goal was. We wanted to refresh our dashboard, and the amount of information on here actually results in a lot of queries. And as you can imagine, you want this to load fast, but it also has to obtain so much data. So we didn't really have any, fancy data infrastructure in place. This was really just doing. We were on Rails, so it's our ORM is called Active Record. So just running queries against the database. A little bit of caching, a little bit of performance, like making sure we have database indexes in place, but that was about it. But we're kind of pushing the limits of it. Customers with lots of data, would get a different experience than customers with a little bit of data. So we wanted to speed it up, but we also wanted to surface more information here. And I just want to call out the time series trends kind of horizontally across the middle. There's like a 7-day and 30-day trend lines. This is the part that just like flat out wouldn't have been possible without Cube.js. These are actually computational expensive. And so our first exercise was identifying which parts of our dashboard didn't need to be real time, that it would be okay, like still valuable if we surfaced information that was calculated daily. So we kind of started with that idea, like what's a daily number that would still be useful, and we thought, well, actually a history of these daily roll-ups, so you can kind of understand the shape of how your business did in the past week, and then compare with your current numbers for today. And so that's where we started, was using Cube.js for daily roll-ups against our production database. So that's different than another use case, or that's often used for Cube.js, which is against like cleaner data, I guess, where it's actually big data or data that's kind of in like a data lake or warehouse. That data tends to be a little cleaner to work with, I think, I from my experience so far. So one of the challenges we encountered was actually as we connected it up to our tables and built the cubes, we would encounter some unexpected data. And so we had to, Jessica knows what I'm talking about. We had to write a little bit clever SQL to kind of deal with that. I think one example was we had anytime you have user input in your database, you have to expect the unexpected, and people would input work for very far future. I think we had work that was 100 years in the future. And we're like, okay, we can't query that time range. That doesn't make sense. So, yeah, we worked through that process. We kind of iterated on the architecture a bit. And actually, if you go to the architect diagram, I'll talk about kind of where we ended up with, and then I can circle back to how we got there. So where we ended up with was actually splitting our Cube.js installation into two pieces. So we have the piece that you are actually querying, that these dashboards are hitting. That's the REST API server. And we separated out that infrastructure from the part that actually does the refresh, which is kind of a fairly intensive operation, because I remember working with daily rollups. So that runs every night, and it pre-computes all these aggregations basically, and writes into the rollup database. It's going against our production database, but it's going against a read replica. So it actually doesn't have the ability to modify anything in this database. And this was actually really good timing. As soon as about the same time we started looking at Cube.js, there was just features coming out to support this kind of approach. And so with just a little bit of a PR here and there to help kind of bring that to a little better maturity, we actually were able to get this approach working. Yeah, so you can see like some of the configuration options, like where we specify that the source is read only, and roll up only mode true to say which instance of Cube.js should be trying to attempt to do the like communicating to the source database and doing roll-ups. Few options of that to allow that server separation was kind of the key pieces. So yeah, we worked pretty closely with Cube.js in kind of the first half of this year, and I guess another key piece here is the authentication. We made a design decision here in this architecture that we would actually continue to use our existing authentication. So Cube.js actually does provide an authentication method, but we are effectively wrapping it under our own API and treating it as a trusted subsystem. So we still have authentication happening, but it's not authenticating. It's just authenticating to our system. It's not authenticating the users directly, but it does do validation that the request has a like a correct reference to our customer, so that like customers aren't seeing other customers' data, or that one customer isn't trying to access multiple, basically go outside the boundaries of their like tenancy model. So yeah, the JWT claim contains the information, like we say like this user has authenticated to us as this identity. I'm going to put the identity information into the token, and please make sure that you only give data for this identity. That's effectively the setup there through the claim. So yeah, that's kind of the architecture we landed on, and the some of the things we had questions when we started out, like is this thing performant enough to handle our load? How many instances are we going to have to run? How many servers do we need to run? How much, like, because kind of like the cost of it, or what the footprint of it's going to look like was totally unknown. So we actually started out by so Jessica and her team basically got it up and running in, I think, what was it, like a couple days less, and we just started throwing traffic at it just to kind of get an understanding of where its bottlenecks were. And so we used a third-party tool to send it traffic called flood.io. There's a number out there. That's the one. That screenshot, if you just scroll up, is actually from flood.io. And what we were looking for is basically where it flew over. So we were like, okay, let's run it on a pretty small server. We were using Heroku at the time, and so we put it on I think a 1x or a 2x, something, a pretty small, basically as much power as your cell phone probably in terms of CPU and memory, and just started ramping up requests to it, and simultaneous requests. So that's what that yellow line represents, is the number of concurrent requests being thrown at the server. So it goes up and up and up. And the green line is the transaction volume, and the blue is the response time. Yeah. So what you want to see is the green line match the yellow line. As you start giving your system more traffic, it should actually be processing that just as fast as it's thrown at it. So you have to run these tests over a long enough period so that you aren't getting like too much spiky instability happening. You can't just like all of a sudden throw full load at it. So that's why there's this ramp up time of several minutes, so that you can kind of watch the response in the blue and green lines. And so you can see here, it actually kept up pretty good. On the green line, and then roughly about 80% of the way through the test, it started to hit kind of its limits. It started to get overwhelmed, and the response time started to kind of go a bit crazy. So that's like the first step is just to understand like what's the upper bound of something. And we were actually able to send it a surprising amount of traffic, because out of the box you're getting those that Redis level caching, which is very efficient. So yeah, that's the kind of the first steps toward comfortable with like how much this thing can handle in terms of volume. And first, we hit a number of different bottlenecks. Like the one in this test, I think, was CPU. And then once you gave that server more CPU, it could handle more until, and this picture tells the story. Memory then becomes the bottleneck once you give it enough CPU. So we actually fought with the memory a little bit. The Node.js, when you start pushing the memory on it, it actually is kind of complicated to tune it for maximizing, like when your server has more memory than Cube.js knows how to work with. It'll happily ramp up like this and eat it all, but it's actually not being efficient at this point. So there was, fortunately, on Jessica's team, we had someone who could read C level source code. That's a skill I lost a long time ago, and actually checked out the Node.js version 10 and version 12 to understand what the memory limitations were and what the parameters were. And because it's the documentation is actually surprisingly confusing. So we eventually figured out kind of like, okay, we're on this version of Node. This is what the parameters need to be to the process. And then this is really the maximum amount of memory we should be targeting. And we actually ended up running it on a beefier server than that, and then multiplying out the number of node processes. So I think it's a fairly common technique in the world of like running production Node.js to maximize your memory usage. We used a library called Throng to do that. So yeah, lots of learnings for us. Like we'd done a bit of Node.js stuff, but like I said, we're kind of a Ruby on Rails shop. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting piece.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I asked you this, like JC or Jessica. Like, I mean, these figuring out these bottlenecks. I mean, how many like days or weeks did your team spend on like investigation and sort of like, you know, trying to understand these bottlenecks?
Yeah, I know. I spent, there was probably, 2 or 3 people looking into this. It was, we were kind of in a, like a 1 or 2 month time period where we were like, just, getting it up and running and slowly bringing in production traffic to it. So typically it does take some time to set up new infrastructure. So this was somewhat light in the sense that like we did choose to self-host. So that means, obviously it's not going to be just to turn it on, but we have a lot of things around any given piece of infrastructure. That means it is going to take some time to set up. So like we connected up to our observability tooling. Like there's like, if this goes down, people get paged, right? Like, so there's, it was all kind of part of just like, I would call this like the performance tuning side of it. So, yeah, I guess this was like a bit of an expected challenge in the sense that like, especially like the differences between the node versions, I think was unexpected. So yeah, there's definitely a number of days, maybe weeks in total while we kind of figured out the optimal tuning approach to get this going.
I think Jessica is leaning more towards weeks looking at her. It's not days, but
Yeah,
go ahead, Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah, it ended up being a couple of weeks, as JC said. It was, as we kind of solved one problem, we would see then kind of something else come up, like JC was saying. Again, we first saw the CPU and then the memory,
Right.
and with Node.js. So it was a little bit of an iterative process, but it was a great learning experience for us as well.
Cool.
Feel much more familiar with the architecture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was alluded to a little bit in the top of the like a user stories. I mean, the question that I want to ask, like, I don't want to dominate all the questions, but in addition to, like, giving you new charting capabilities and visualization capabilities, I mean, how has, like, hopefully your lives have gotten better, because I think you had to do a lot of manual coding before Cube.js to process all the data and do visualization. But I mean, what are some of the things that that you can share that it's like has your life gotten better with Cube.js, and in what regards?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that comes to mind for me is just that it gives us a standard vocabulary. So regardless of like where we are on the product, when we need this type of like roll-up data, we're not just like going straight to the base and writing SQL and then possibly having to do something very similar elsewhere. We're actually using the vocabulary of the cube and using like aggregates and measures and dimensions. So that vocabulary is huge, because you can author like a cube that has a higher chance of getting reused elsewhere in the product. So it's almost like you're building kind of like a source of truth for these types of metrics. And then it's close, like at the consumption level, it's actually close to like using like a warehouse where you have like this highly well thought out, well structured data to work with. You kind of have that built into the vocabulary. The vocabulary kind of forces you down the path, and without having to build like the full ETL process on the other side. So yeah, that's definitely one area that that I think we appreciated. The second one, I think, is just the encapsulation of queries. So again, I guess it's kind of similar, but basically the decoupling of the SQL. So we're talking to it in terms of this vocabulary instead of hitting our ORM directly. So it gives a place for all of that caching and like performance improvement place to happen. And so the second thing, obviously, that we really benefited from is the caching, like basically like the for free caching that you get.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we got like 2 minutes left, and like we have one last question wanted to ask, like, what's next for you with Cube.js? I mean, and I obviously don't want you to share any confidential information with your product plans and all that. So anything else that your team and both of you are looking at with Cube.js going forward?
The one I think for me is like, after seeing how easily it can deal with like basically anytime you need historical data, like it can pre-compute all the history for you. Like, we should never really be doing any major historical requests outside of Cube.js. And so one place in the product where that would be pretty valuable for us is in the area where we provide reports to our customers, so they can actually like reports against their own data over like years. So that's currently like a fairly heavy load on our infrastructure that I think we could actually greatly reduce by shifting that over to Cube. And it wouldn't just be a performance boost. I think we could also it'd also make it easier to write new reports, because like I said, you're now writing against the standard vocabulary. You're not having to write a bunch of lower level code to run to like to collect that data yourself. So yeah, reporting I think is definitely something we have our eyes on for the future. And yeah, it comes up now and then every time, basically anytime somebody's like, oh, this is an expensive thing to do, how do I make it faster? One of the options we discuss is if Cube.js is the approach.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to continue working with you, and definitely appreciate, I mean, both of you contributing not just to user stories, but I mean, even in the user story, you can tell, I think we have links to like a PRs and contributions you've made. Definitely appreciate that. And oh, last but not least, congratulations on your funding. Saw the articles yesterday. I mean, congrats. And yeah, definitely looking forward to future collaboration. Appreciate your time. And oh,
Yeah,
Igor,
thanks.
sorry, sorry. I mean, Igor, I think, sorry, I just saw your chat question. Sorry, I didn't see it until now. But I think we can move some of these questions to Slack. I mean, I apologize for dominating all the questions, but if people have questions for the Jabra team, I think we can continue the conversation on Slack. And yeah, well, thanks again for your time. So.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. So switching back on to Q1 roadmap. So I'll cover like a couple of slides. I mean, this is something that we started doing, I mean, starting with the first call in November. We wanted to sort of share our priority work items for the quarter. So I'll quickly recap like Q4, and I'll turn things over to Pavel, and he'll delve into details on some of the key items for Q1. So for Q4, we started out with 5 what we call epic items, and in the image here, I just filtered the epics that were done. So the 4 out of 5s are done, which is great, and unfortunately, we had to postpone one of the epics on view integration to Q1, but I think there's already a PR that was raised, I believe, around the holiday timeframe, and so hopefully, people. I think Ricardo, you're on the call. Hopefully, you've seen that. So we'll try to complete that in Q1. And although the Cube Store epic was done for Q4, but we created a new one for Q1 of 2021 to sort of continue on the Cube Store work. And I'll let Pavel talk about that in more detail. And for Q1 roadmap, I mean, here they are. So if you look at project 7, we have 4 items here, including the view integration one that was just moved over. And actually, before I turn things over to Pavel to get into more detail, like RTM or Pavel, anything you want to add on the Q4 items, or are we ready to just move on to Q1 items?
Yeah, I think we're ready to move to.
Okay. All right.
Q1.
So
yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, I'll turn things over to you, Pavel, and then let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Thanks, JC, like for this story. Yeah. Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. So, yeah, I would be short here. This quarter we are going to high level focus on sophistication. So what we figure out over time, over like last months, we have a lot of production deployments right now, like the scale like of a Jobber and even bigger ones. So what we figure out is some kind of obvious things in DevOps and on an infrastructure side that was pretty obvious. We thought it's pretty obvious to us, like something like deployment and stuff like that. It turns out when you go with something at scale, it becomes not an obvious question, and we hear it more and more right now. So, this quarter we decided to focus more on these sophisticated use cases. So there are 3 directions and like 3 corresponding epics will work this quarter to achieve some sophisticated, like to improve some use cases for this sophistication. First one is authentication and authorization. So what we figure out, as we have one simple endpoint for authorization, we figure out no one uses this as an out-of-the-box way, and there is always custom code here. And actually what happens, everyone who lands on authentication of Cube.js actually wants some kind of integration with existing servers, like either Auth0, AWS, their own like proxying stuff as in Jobber use case. So there are like several standard use cases in authentication and authorization we want to cover. So those will be reflected as usually as like separate packages or like separate section in documentation. In terms of changes, there would be some API changes we would like to be done. Those will involve mostly naming of APIs, like security context, like where these claims in JWT tokens are saved, stuff like that. So you from this change, you probably might expect that there will be API changes. However, all the existing code that works right now will be like compatible with the newer version. So all of these changes will be backward compatible. Yeah. So it's mostly for integration part. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. Yeah, this one is ongoing activity for Cube Store. So this is general availability of Cube Store. And what we are going to do here is we are going to ship it as a opt-in feature of any Cube.js installation we install, like from scratch. So what happens with Cube Store right now is we already have some production deployments with it, and most of use cases it was designed to it's already like handle it. And for Cube Store, for these installations and for this general availability, it will be shipped as a Docker container, and we also going to provide some native installations so people can at least start developing with Cube Store. So get a sense what it can do for them. Again, in terms of like goals for Cube Store and motivation behind the Cube Store, so you want to use Cube Store when you have this, for example, like multiple problems. First of all, if you have like data warehouse and it has a lot of partitions, and this is partitions quite big, and you want to scan them over again, it means it's usually boils down to hundreds of partitions that span like in a single query. It's usually like 1 year queries or something like it. It can be RDBMS as a source, or usually it's data warehouse. So Cube Store very effective at union, at these union queries. It also allows this quite new feature we still need to document. It allows you to join data between data sources. It's data federated access. So there's quite new feature which is called rollup join, and Cube Store makes it possible on this basically database level. It enables it because Cube Store stores the data the way it can be joined very effectively. So there is another thing, and some specific use cases. For example, if you want to download this hyperlock log rollups to count approximate things from Athena or BigQuery to somewhere, and Cube Store also solves those problems. So overall, Cube Store is designed to handle all the pre-aggregation, external pre-aggregations that we have right now in Cube.js, and will be down the road, it will be a major store for external pre-aggregations. Okay, cool. I think we can go to the next one. Yeah, so as I already told, we working towards sophistication of infrastructure, and what we figure out, so pre-aggregations right now is the most questionable thing in terms of deployment and infrastructure. We keep getting these questions around how we can deploy this into production environment and how we maintain it in this production environment. And what we thought is obvious right now. It seems we need make some parts as a part of open source Cube.js product. These parts involve, for example, things like warm-up of pre-aggregations. It's when this question arises when you have already production deployment and you want actually do some sort of continuous integration, continuous delivery of your new changes to existing production environment. There is a pretty tough problem of warming up your deployment. So how you can deploy it if your service should work 24/7. So and there is a concept called pre-aggregations warm-up. So it will allow you to basically, when you have some staging environment and you deploy a new version of Cube.js schema, pre-aggregations warm-up will allow you to basically wait until all pre-aggregations are built from the new version before you deploy actual front end and production serving this new version of your schema to your users. So that's basically hot swap of your new schema. So we'll provide APIs for that and some documentation around how to work with this stuff. And there will be some API changes that will be involved in this process. Yeah, I think that's it in terms of major goals for this quarter. Yeah, right. I'll let you take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you, Pavel. I mean, any questions from people on the call? I'm gonna double check on chat and make sure that I'm not missing any questions. But yeah, if you have any feedback or questions on 4 items that we have for the Q1 roadmap, I mean, please let us know. If not during the call, happy to continue the discussion on Slack as well. But just want to make sure there are no concerns or questions. All right, sounds like everyone's okay. Any other questions? I mean, even not related to the roadmap. I mean, any questions that people have that you'd like us to address, or any future topic suggestions? All right. Well, thanks, JC. I'm just seeing your chat, JC. Excited to try out the Cube Store. Yeah, we're excited too. So, any feedback or questions people have, I'm sure you'll let us know on Slack and other channels. Cool. Well, thanks to everyone for participating on the first call of the year. Hopefully you'll continue to have a good start of the year, and we'll do this again next month. I'll talk to you again soon.